yeah, we went over T50, and for all intents and purposes, whether you're T50, XAG P100Pro, T30, we've got an old T16 back here. Most of the principles remain the same. Look over your equipment, keep your equipment clean, do your best to help the drone stay in the air, and you're gonna be more profitable, less headache. But same thing with the P100Pro. It has a little bit different locking mechanism, but they fold in and out too. There are no sensors on this one. So for instance, if you were to fold one out and forget to lock it, your remote is not going to tell you. So best practice is close them up, keep your hand open. If you get them caught in there, you will know it, and pop them down hard and do a little bit of a clasp check.
Yeah,
there,
holding that bottom one, you know that they're clasping
together.
Together.
And then yeah, you can even mess with it a little bit, but once they lock in, click in hard, you can feel it, you know it. Same thing like Brandon was talking with the T50 or T40 blades. Do a run on those, make sure there's no visible marks, chips, or big dings out of them. And what I like to do with P100Pro is it's got this rocking blade mount, and push them all the way to one side and kind of give it a little bit of a up and down motion here to make sure there's not excess play. There are plastic bushings within there to tighten those back up. That's a wear part. Eventually they're going to go out.
So I'd probably assume that that's pretty important to look at. Make sure there's no cracks or frays within inside this plastic piece, because if there is a little crack going down the interior of it, and you don't know that, that blade could come apart, and because it's not attached to the two screws, that would be correct. That would be a bad day.
Yeah, very much so. So the P100Pro runs off of a 2-battery system, but the same principle applies. Drop them in, make sure they click in. If you get batteries bouncing out, whether it's P100Pro, any DJI product, you're gonna start shorting things out. They're not gonna run without a battery, and if they're in the air and those pop out, big problems. So yeah, the primary radar for the P100Pro is up front here. Keep that clean. They also have some XAG proprietary terrain follow and radar stuff on the bottom. So this whole area here, you want to make sure it remains clean and not broken. That's a big spot to check. And same as with the P1 or the T50 to the P100Pro, your pumps and stuff are all on the back here. There are 2 hoses that come down from the actual drone portion down to the Revo spray. Your pumps and all of that are on the Revo spray, is what this bottom half is called, with your landing gear, tank, pump assembly, is a Revo spray system. That all swaps out to do your dry spreading, and that's a Revo cast. Just visually check that those aren't kinked like this one is.
I was gonna ask you while you're back there, if I'm coming in and I'm swapping tanks, going from granular to now liquid products, you know, where am I gonna connect the tank so that it can relay information?
Yep, so there is one, and we'll get some pictures of this too. There is one electrical plug here that comes loose, and these 2, you wanna film while I'm doing it?
I'll do it right after.
And then these 2 hoses come loose, and this electrical plug, and they are sticky.
So to get the tank out of the P100, we have to disconnect both those hoses on the back and the electrical plug, which is all in the back next to the pumps and hoses that come up to the tanks.
Yep, so liquid and electrical is disconnected now. From that point, there's 2 clasps here, and now you're completely loose from your Revo spray.
So in theory, you could have multiple bases and multiple tanks and swap the drone tank to tank to tank.
I've had that question with guys, and you know, to me in an infield scenario, I think you come in, swap batteries, you're gonna be able to fill faster than taking those hoses off, swapping the plug.
Yep.
But I have had guys say, you know, well, I'm gonna buy a tank and a Revo spray for herbicide, and that one's gonna just be for herbicide. One for fungicide. In my opinion, good practice, because you're not gonna have any cross-contamination that way.
Well, yeah, and the wear and tear, you know, if you're having to move it base station to base station to base station, you're gonna be putting a lot of wear and tear on those lines and those connectors, and those are gonna be more extensive things to fix and very problematic if they go out. If you have a full pump or that full electrical system in the back go out mid-flight, it's gonna throw up a lot of warnings, and you're gonna have to land, and you're gonna have to take the drone out of the field back to the hangar to really take it apart and replace those correctly, do test flights before you can really go back in the field and start spraying again.
Yep.
That's cool.
Lock that back down.
And pretty easy here too. I mean, we just went over it, but we can tighten them, and then we can also loosen these, and there's a white line and a little arrow, and those need to match up, because then when you want to move it,
Take her a little looser. Yep.
got to make it looser. When you want to move it back up, you got to slide it right back into its holder, and then say you were taking it down, same thing, you just pop it off.
Very nice feature for transport with what they did with the P100 Pro.
Well, we've seen it. We keep a lot of ours in the back of the trucks if we're moving from field to field, you know, have 10, 20 miles where we have to drive on the highway. And especially on the T40 and T50, we ratchet strap the drone down because we have the generator back there too. It's either going to be pressing against the back of the truck or pressing against the generator. And sadly, the nozzles are what take a large amount of that heat because they sit up higher than all the other blades when it's fully compact and folded into each other.
And I think we can both attest to this. If you've flown a T40 for a season, you definitely know what a spray rod adaptive shaft is, and you've probably changed them out.
Changed two right before we came out here. And yeah, those are a big thing because they are made of plastic and there's such a small locking mechanism in it that when it does get pushed or something and it pops out, once you've kind of broken that edge of the clip there, you've broken it, and it's just going to sit there and dangle, or you'll push it back in and you'll do 2 flights and you'll come back and it's dangling again.
Or gone.
Yeah. And
I've had customers lose them completely. I've had customers where it banked or turned and it actually flipped the nozzle up into the props and caused an accident.
Yeah.
So once those pop loose generally you replace them because they never seat back tight enough.
Well, yeah, and we've seen too, when that happens and the pumps are running, that's putting pressure onto the sprayers. So if those come loose, you know, we see kinking in the lines, things like that, because all of the lines on all the drones run through the arm to the actual tank. So it's a much more of a process to get in there, you know, take the whole sprayer off just to unkink that little part of the line when you could have just gone in and fixed the spray adaptive shaft and been ready to go fly again.
Absolutely.
Okay, P100. Okay, I guess we'll just go over it too. We can add this at the front, but just like the T50, we're gonna wanna run down the arm, make sure, like Brett said, that the arm is latched because there is no alert on the controller to let you know. Check all those and then physically run your hand down. Make sure that you can't feel any bends in the metal. The T50 is gonna have the carbon fiber arms.
And this is aircraft aluminum on these.
And these are gonna be aircraft aluminum, so I would assume they show dents pretty easily. They show cracks and marks because it'll break through that even though it is stronger.
And one thing I've kind of used as a distinguishing factor, so when these fold up, we'll add pictures of this. When you fold them in, you see here, Brandon, how there's these notches. There's a notch here, and then kind of a receiver here.
Oh, nice.
So you know that if you're pushing it together and those aren't lining up, you might have a bend or a tweak somewhere. I've used that as an indicator before.
And there's no real way to tell on the T40 when you put the arms in unless you can actually see it in the bracket difference. So that is a nice feature of XAG that you can watch those. So we're running down the arms. We've checked, like Brett was talking about, these are where we connect when we pull the arms in. And then again, running down to the motor. Put your hands on the motor. Don't be afraid to touch your drone and make sure, okay, there's no cracks here. It's freely turning. There's not any kickback. It's not hitting things as it's spinning. And running your hands down the blades too to make sure there's no cracks, frays, or damage that's going to affect the air flight or the flight conditions.
And doing a spin on this motor too to make sure there's no graveliness or graininess in that turn. Even giving it a little shake side to side here to make sure, you know, there's no bearings internally going out. Anything that's going to cause more heat, take more power, potentially cause an accident.